So this morning, it took me a little while to find a good title for this talk, and I settled on when life throws crud at you. And there are many other words I could have used to put in there, and I'm sure you can imagine some of those words or may not be as appropriate as we'd like for church. But to be honest, this is totally biblical. This is what it's talking about. Most translations will translate this, the fig tree, that let me dig around it, and it says, and fertilize it. Well, the Greek is pretty specific. It says, let me dig around it and throw dung at it. That's what the Greek says. And sometimes it feels like life is kind of like that, isn't it? Like things, the junk is just being thrown at us. I want to ask a few questions and see what you guys think. What things in life actually force us to change? Tragedies? Illness? Disabilities? Those things force us to change our lives. You can think about somebody who is dealing with an illness, and they go to the doctor and they say, look, if you don't give this up, you're going to die. And that might be the first time that somebody who's an alcoholic or a smoker or something, that they finally change their behavior because of the threat of something terrible. In general, it's unlikely for us to change when things are going well. It's kind of the if it ain't broke, don't fix it type of line with life. If life is going well, why would I change anything? So it's kind of when it's not going well that we finally are willing to change. And that doesn't mean that we can't just make incremental changes all the time, which is what we should be doing. Just slowly working on, okay, let's look at something in my life that I know is wrong and against the Word and work on that. That's what we should be doing, but in general, the big changes happen when negative things happen to us or when we feel the effects of our negative behaviors. So take another example. My father probably wouldn't have given up drinking if he wasn't left in a jail cell and told it's your family or you're drinking. The result of his behavior put him in jail, and Mom said, sorry, we're driving back home. And he did change. We're lucky that he changed. But it took that serious, devastating moment for him to change that behavior. The Lord's parable in Luke that we read today explains this principle of human behavior, that it's in fact in, say, the manure or dung in life that we actually grow to become spiritual people. So, before the Lord tells this parable, he talks about two interesting scenarios, because the people are telling him or speaking about this situation where it seems like Pilate had basically killed a whole bunch of people and mingled their blood into the sacrifices at the tabernacle or at the temple, and they're questioning, why does this happen? So Jesus talks to them and he says, well, do you think that they were greater sinners, these Galileans that were killed by Pilate? Like, that must be the reason why they were killed, right? He's not talking about that specific instance, but he backs it up with another one. He says, well, you remember that time where the tower at Siloam fell on top of 18 people? Do you suppose that those Jews were worse sinners than everybody else? And he follows these up by saying, no, they weren't. But if you don't repent, then you're going to have the same future as they have. But one of the things that the Lord is trying to talk to in this section is that what happens to us isn't always the result of something that we caused. So if we're sinning or something like that, it doesn't mean that we're going to get the disease that is caused by that sin. Or what was commonly held, especially in the Middle Ages, was this idea of, well, think about the bubonic plague. Well, they must have gotten it because they were sinners. So people would look at, well, what's wrong in this person, and then equate that to their spiritual state. And the Lord's saying that's not really how it works. But you still need to repent. So, this is the precursor to this parable that the Lord tells of a fig tree. The fig tree, it's a weird space. Where is the fig tree planted? It's in a vineyard. You would think that the fig tree would be amongst other fig trees. You have a grove of fig trees on this land. Instead, he has a fig tree planted in a vineyard, which is a slightly odd image. Why would that be the case? And the Lord is in this parable talking about us being the fig tree. And the vineyard is what the Lord kind of is hoping for us. A fig tree represents a natural person, our natural lives. That's how we all start. We all start off pretty natural. And it's not bearing fruit. So it's saying this natural person is really staying self-centered. They're not thinking about other people. They're not thinking about how obedient they should be. They aren't doing good. A natural person who's really focused on themselves can't do any real good. They can do things that look good, but really it's to benefit themselves. If somebody's truly self-centered, everything is reflecting on how does this make me look, how does this make me feel, how does it benefit me in some way, and so it's not real charity, it's not real fruit. So this fig tree hasn't been bearing fruit for 3 years, and it's in this vineyard. Well, the hope is that this vineyard pictures a spiritual person. It's an image of a spiritual person. So the grapes represent spiritual truth, and they represent charity, the works of charity. So there's a hope that a person can go from being natural to being spiritual. And another way we could think about the vineyard, or this fig tree in the vineyard, a vineyard also represents a church, or the church. The Lord's Word, in a way, the truths of the Lord's Word. So the hope is that people, natural people, can be involved in some type of a group, maybe like this, that can come and learn and grow out of just that self-centered, natural life. That's the whole purpose of church, isn't it? The whole point of coming here is not to, you guys could have other things to do on Sunday mornings. Hopefully you enjoy being here. But the point isn't to come pay your tithe so that you can get into heaven. The point is so that we come here, learn, we have community together, we actually grow together, and hopefully we bear fruit. So, the owner of the vineyard comes along. He notices that the fig tree is barren. He says, cut it down. You might think of another image of a fig tree in the Lord's Word, and it's the Lord who's passing by with his disciples, and he sees a fig tree that's also barren, and he curses it. Well, you're not bearing fruit. It's cursed. This one, it's taking up good ground. And so the disciples come back the next day to this one fig tree, and it's withered because the Lord cursed it. And this sounds pretty rough for us if we're thinking about us being the fig tree. If we're not actually doing good, or we're not actually bearing fruit, that sounds like the Lord's condemning them, right? The Lord doesn't condemn anybody. People make their choice to stay in a natural mindset, and if they continue to do that for eternity, that's what hell becomes. But the one in Luke here, where we're talking about this fig tree in the vineyard, the vine dresser comes along, and he says, wait, just hold on a minute. Let me give it one more year. Let's dig around it and throw dung at it. And if it doesn't grow by next year, then go ahead and cut it down. What do you think this represents in our lives? Those bad things that make us change. When we feel the effects of our negative behaviors or our self-centered behaviors, where, let's say, everybody starts discovering how self-centered you are. And then nobody really likes to be around you because they know how selfish you're being, or greedy, or whatever it is. If you start to feel the effects of everybody just shunning you, you might actually decide to change something. It might be a tragic event. It might be the loss of a loved one. Something like that it might actually wake us up and go, I haven't been living up to my full potential. I haven't been living the way that the Lord's been teaching me. And sometimes those tragedies can wake us up This is such an interesting little parable to talk about because it feels like that sometimes, like things are getting thrown at us, that negative things happen primarily because they can lead to good. So the Lord, in His Word, Arcana Celestia, our readings talking about the way that divine providence and foresight work. Because you'd think, this is the way that people like to think, is if the Lord knew the bad things that were going to happen to us before they happened, why wouldn't He stop them? This is a big reason for many people to deny the existence of God. Well, if He knew that that child would have been harmed in such and such a way, why would He let it happen? So that's foresight. If He knows ahead of time, that's foresight. But He's saying He foresees all evil, but He provides all good. So providence is the provision of good. The nature of the Lord's divine providence is such that it is linked together with a knowledge of future event, or foresight. In fact, providence does not exist without foresight. For evil things are foreseen, but good ones are provided. And the evil things that are foreseen are constantly being turned towards what is good by means of the Lord's providence. Since the divine end, which has good in view, governs everything, nothing is therefore allowed to happen except to the end that something good may come out of it. It's a very powerful teaching. Nothing is allowed to happen except to the end that something good may come out of it. It takes a lot of trust in the Lord's providence to look at the terrible things that go on and say that the Lord is turning it all towards something good. If it wouldn't have been permitted had the Lord not had some ability to turn it towards something good. And that's a beautiful way to recognize, even though we don't feel it all the time, but to recognize that the Lord is constantly involved in bending our lives away from hell and towards heaven. That the things that happen in this lifetime is so short. And yes, there's a lot of bad things that happen, but it's such a short period of time. So let's think about this. If you knew that it would be something really joyful if something bad happened right now, let's just try to think of a little example. You might think about eating something that you know is healthy, but it doesn't taste very good. And you might do it because you know it's going to lead towards something good. Well, let's think that in the Lord's providence, anything that's bad that happens, the Lord is looking towards how does this affect our eternal lives? How much should He permit if He knows that it's going to lead to our salvation? That it can lead towards our salvation. Now, what's interesting about this parable at the end, we never hear the result. So we have the fig tree. He says, we'll leave it alone for this year. Let's throw dung at it, and then if it's bears fruit, then great. Well, we don't get to come back the next year and find out if it worked. Because even though the Lord is constantly trying to bend things towards our eternal welfare, towards good, to bend our lives away from hell towards heaven, and if not up into heaven, then at least to a lesser hell. So He doesn't want us to be in misery. So it's just a funny idea. Let's stray you away from that lowest hell that you're constantly diving towards. Let's bring you up at least to here. And maybe if you're willing to go into heaven. But the Lord can't take away our freedom in this. So even though the Lord is trying to bend us, sometimes we're not willing. We aren't willing to take the clue. So let's look at what the Lord is really doing to help us make the good choice. So what does it mean to dig around the fig tree and throw dung at it? At first, we see that the Lord allows us to remain in our natural and selfish ways. He says, let it alone this year also. Our selfish ways are really permitted, even though, according to the owner of the vineyard, it's using up good ground. The reason why these things are permitted is because hopefully we will come to see the negative effects of our lower loves, and to do that with the help of the Lord. In order for us to see how badly selfish and worldly we can be, and how bad those things can affect us, we have to learn something about what good and useful loves are. So symbolically, this is like the Lord digging around the tree. In gardening, we know that if you have just like parched earth where it's packed down, water can't really get into it. So this is part of it. So digging around it, the Lord allows negative things to churn up our soil, to churn up our minds, to start thinking a little bit differently. And then when we start noticing that when we're churned and we are ready to be receptive of the Lord's word, which is that water going down into the soil, that this actually is one of the first times we might listen to the Lord's word. It wasn't reaching down deep enough. So negative events basically are like tilling the soil of our mind to allow us to be receptive. And then that fertilizer, the manure, that actually helps make the ground really fertile. That's why people use it. It makes our vegetables better. It's kind of sad to think that that's what something goes into our vegetables. But it's true. The weird refuse causes things to grow. In learning what is good and true from the Word, as our spiritual ground has been tilled, it's more receptive of truth. We learn more and more about what is wrong with our lives and what we need to do to fix it. And this is where one of the greatest dilemmas in life is. How do we change something about ourselves that we love when we know it isn't good for us? What would make us actually change? You know, there's a parable a lesson that is in the Heavenly Doctrine for the New Church that talks about this. It's in a spiritual diary. I want to read this really quick. It says, "Filthy and foul spiritual things are excrement." Sorry about this reading, but this is right there. The ground being fertilized by excrement therefore portrays that they who confess their filthy sins and acknowledge that they are manure are the kind of ground from which seeds sprout up. Likewise, in the other life, when filthy pleasures such as those of adultery and cruelty rot and become stinking like manure, so that they can begin to abhor them, then they are like a soil in which propensity for goodness can be sown. It's a hard thing for us to do, to accept or to admit. Yeah, we are filthy, disgusting, and kind of like this manure at times. Hopefully many of us have grown through that and have grown out of it and have become better people already. I don't know how far along any of us are on our spiritual lives, but I can definitely look at my own heart and, yeah, there's some gross things there. Hopefully we grow to abhor those things in us. Amazingly, this spiritual ground is extremely fertile. Just like manure creates fertile ground for fruit-bearing plants and flowers, when we recognize the truth about our lower desires and see the truth about what those desires lead to, we will become willing to change and grow according to the Lord's providence. We become open to spiritual ideas that will lead us to do useful things for the Lord and our neighbors, and eventually we might become ripe with the energy to act in heavenly ways. It's in this way that our natural lives are transformed from being purely natural to becoming spiritual, fulfilling the potential which the Lord sees in us as a fig tree planted in a vineyard. Amen.